Welcome to the Bodega Cat Podcast with Christina Ng. Over the next hour, you'll hear from guest experts from a variety of different backgrounds, with specialties pertaining to pets and humans alike. Now, here is Christina.
Hello, everybody. Thank you so much for tuning in today. This is the Bodega Cat Podcast, and my name is Christina. I'll be your host today. We have a very special guest for this podcast. His name is Michael Lane. And Michael is an animal communicator and animal healer based in New Mexico. He grew up with dogs, rabbits, gerbils, hamsters, and birds. Two of the most transformative periods in his life were both marked by animals. Michael's black cat, Bandit, that's a cute name, who he adopted in 1995, was his first cat, and not only opened his eyes to how amazing cats are, but also to how the friendship and love with animal is no different and no less deep than that with another human. Cats do change our lives, don't they, Michael? I know mine did.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
100%.
Very spiritual beings. In 2013, Michael embarked on a month-long trip to Thailand to volunteer at a village that rescues elephants. Oh, I'd love to hear that story. My mom was from Thailand and I lived there for about 2.5 years, so it'll be very interesting to hear your experiences. The experiences he had with those special, highly evolved animals led directly to a life rebirth that started him down the path that led to communicating with animals professionally. Michael is a professional practicing animal communicator and healer. He is well versed in EFT tapping and scalar wave energy healing, something we both have in common. Two effective modalities that support the health and well-being of our furry companions. In addition to animal communication and energy healing, he offers services to help find lost animals, support animals and their humans at the ends of the animals' lives. And he also teaches animal communication to people. I love to hear those stories too, because I worked as a hospice nurse for over 25 years. So I've experienced the end of life for the humans. So it'll be very interesting to hear some of your stories as well. Michael lives in Sandia Park, New Mexico, with his wife, Diane. Did I pronounce that right?
Yep.
Okay. And his family of cats, Butch, Sundance. You can give him some cute names, Picasso, Lyle, and Yoda. Michael's goal is not only to help people with their immediate issues with their animals, but to help us connect all on a deeper level to our brother and sister animals. We're all in this together. Well, first of all, thank you so much, Michael, for coming on today as a guest. I want to thank our mutual client. She knows who she is. I won't name any names, for connecting us together. And secondly, I want to offer my condolences to your family cat that has just passed away. So I wanted to kind of open the floor a little bit and maybe have you introduce yourself a little bit. What are some of the highlights in your life that kind of got you where you are today? And we'll go into some of the stories, which I love to hear about your experiences and your experiences with your travel in Thailand and your experiences with your cats. So we'll go from there.
Sure. Well, thank you for having me on. It's a real pleasure. And if we're talking about animals, I'm always pretty happy. Yeah. So like the thing said, I grew up not with no cats. My father didn't like them. So, and I had sort of a busy job in my 20s. And so I adopted my first cat then, and it just kind of transformed my life. I think, even growing up, I didn't sort of have the connection with our family animal companions like I did when I adopted that cat. And, I think part of that is just, the example of my parents were, I don't think they were as into animals as sort of we were. And I definitely was, but so I adopted this black cat, and then actually soon after, about a year later, I got a friend for him, and boy, did they were like almost long lost friends, and they were completely opposite, but they bonded like amazingly well. And but Bandit in particular, and just the experience there, I just in my 20s I was kind of a mess. I was sort of an alcoholic, and I had addictions to drugs too, and the only constant in my life was my cats. They were the only ones, my only healthy relationships, the only ones who I just felt like, like we do, the unconditional love. Like no matter how bad I screwed up or, had a bad day or was, came home inebriated, fed them late, kind of those things. Like, it's like they still loved me, like, and so, and, there were certain instances actually, one instance in particular where Bandit literally saved my life, where I I put something on the stove and then passed out because I was drunk, and it started, it was, what happened is the smoke alarm went off and I didn't hear it. And so he actually leaned down into my ear and I heard his meow, and that's what woke me up. And I jump up, and, the whole kitchen wall is scorched. And like if it had gone further, there could have been a serious fire.
Wow.
So anyway, I really think sort of the experience with them really kind of pushed me into eventually getting sober. And, once that sort of, especially getting sober and that sort of awakening, like I just, like all animals, the experiences with all of them started to, again, spurred on by Bandit and his buddy named Hooper, they just kind of changed my life, and to the point where, animals became so important to me. And, it'd be like if you're walking down the street, walking your dog, I would say hello to the dog first. Like I would go and, I was that kind of person, or I became that kind of person. And so, and like I said, I had never had cats as a younger person. And they are very, dogs are amazing too. All animals are amazing, but, just living with them and the love they gave me and just the personalities they have, the fact that they, for example, Bandit, if I played loud music, he'd come right up to me and he'd yell at me, and I knew what he was saying. I didn't even know animal communication then, but I knew it was to turn it off, and I did. But they really started it, and then, I don't know if you want me to talk about the elephants yet, but it would just became, through sort of changing my life anyway, with a big sort of help from those cats, from taking care of those cats, from the stability that they provided me. Like they really helped me to sort of, seek sobriety, and then everything opened up for me. Like it was just about, like, everything changed for me. Like I was one of those people who doubted and looked down on everything that people like you and me do. I just thought it was all nuts, like not real, like fakery, like people conning you. And I just realized that the opposite is true. Like this stuff is really important. Like what you do at your center, and what I do to help animals and people. And so that sort of kind of that opening up of my perspective really kind of led me forward from there.
So did you actively adopt Bandit, or did Bandit show up?
Yeah, I adopted him. What happened is my girlfriend at the time, she had a friend, she was a hairdresser, and someone had dropped and this was in Los Angeles, like I think a box full or a sack full of baby kittens, black kittens, into the dumpster behind the hairdresser shop. And so obviously they found them, these kittens, and my girlfriend was, they were trying to adopt them out, and my girlfriend was like, "Hey, do you want a cat?" And so when I showed up to kind of meet the cats, this one, he was kind of the little guy of the litter, the kind of the runty guy of the litter. He came right up to me. So
he chose you.
Yep. Like they usually do.
Yeah. Oh, that's beautiful. Your story sort of reminded me of a movie called The Street Cat Named Bob. I don't know if you've heard of it.
No.
But it was a similar story where, in fact, he wrote a book, the person, and they made it to a movie. But this was based in England, in London, I think.
Oh.
But the protagonist, the main character, he was a drug addict, and it was, very similar to your story. And this cat, there's an orange tabby, and today is National Tabby Cats Day. So happy tabby cat to all the tabby cats out there. This little orange tabby cat saved his life. It's a heartwarming story. I have it on my website under movie recommendations, and you can watch it. Yeah, you can watch it free on YouTube. So check it out. But that is a beautiful story. I think cats and dogs are here on a mission. Their mission are very different, but they both are here to help us awaken our spirituality, our spiritual self, and to get us closer to God or the divine or whatever you want to call it. So they're very, very
completely agree with that. And
yeah.
I mean, along those lines, I kind of think, because we as humans think we are more evolved than animals, that we're higher on the, and especially, talking to animals all day, and animals who have passed all day. Like, I think most animals are more evolved than us, like where it really counts, the spirituality.
I think so too. Yeah. They're more in tune to their instinctive side. And I think we're here to help each other evolve, as we open our hearts as human beings, as we open our hearts and take care of them. We're going beyond service of self, right? The ego and all that. And we're actually helping another person or taking care of another being outside of us. And that's love. That's unconditional love.
Yeah. And just, absolutely. And my story too is how, if you let them, they transform you. They bring you closer to the divine. They can really transform you. So just by taking care of them.
Absolutely. Yeah. Wow, that's a beautiful story. I love that story that you have. So did you, was there a point where you knew that you were going to be an animal communicator professionally, or is that something that's sort of, I think I can do this, or?
Yeah, that was a little bit of a journey too. I was an editor in the movie business for years and years. And that was very long hours, like sometimes 60, 70-hour weeks, and no life. And I did that for almost about 30 years, actually a little longer. And at a certain point, I was just burning out. And what happened is yeah, with the animal stuff, I was really starting to think like, okay, I want to do something else. And I thought that might be, that had to do with animals. And I thought that might be, sort of, I don't know, pet store, owning a pet store, or, pet boarding, or, sort of, actually, before they had cat cafes in LA, I had that idea. Like, I don't remember, they had them in Japan or some other countries before then. So, I mean, wasn't an original idea, but there were none in LA. Now there's at least 2 that I think. But, so that was the thing. And then in that period is when I took my, cause I had taken like a sabbatical from work and, was like, what am I going to do? I can't do this anymore. And so one of the things I did is that trip to Thailand. I was like, okay, I want to see some really amazing animals that who knows if I ever get the chance to see again. Who knows, like with elephants, say, and big cats, if they're even going to be on this planet for very much longer, the way things are going. Mm-hmm. So, and it was down to big cats and elephants. And I was like, okay, elephants. And so that was a village that was Chiang Mai, near Chiang Mai, like in the mountains near Chiang Mai, in Thailand. And I was there for a little over a month. And, these are elephants that were sort of rescued because they're used in the timber industry to just drag logs all day, or they're used in, the tourism trade to do stupid things like, play soccer or whatever. And I would just encourage people to, if they go to places where that stuff is done, to not support that, because those elephants have horrible lives. But so these are elephants that they still kind of belong to people, the mahouts in this village, but they got to do what elephants do and sort of forage in the jungle and kind of act like elephants. And so the whole purpose of the trip was sort of, like me and a bunch of other people, we just volunteer there. Like I actually had to pay to go there, and that helps support like, the mahouts, so these elephants don't have to go back into those places and they can, adopt more. And I didn't know animal communication then, but that trip just completely changed me again to where like, okay, I have to do something for animals, and the pet store is no good. And like, I didn't know what. Like, I have to be closer to them. This is not like retail products or, I don't know. And it was just that experience. And so many other things happened. Like, I had quit smoking a little before that trip, maybe a year before, but I was on the nicotine gum. And, during that trip, I just stopped using it. Like I didn't need it anymore. I had quit drinking, but smoked for a while, and I was a nicotine addict for longer than anything else. And so, and then like my fear of insects, I was always, animals are great, but insects, no way. Well, there's insects all over the place there. And again, like it shifted me. So I was like, I find insects interesting, and they have their lives too. And now I go around saving them from the cats, and like all this happened. And then I was just like, I have to find something else. And then I just took a animal communication class when I got back from that trip. And this is again something that I would have been closed down to, like, a decade before, or, 15 years before. I would have been like, this is bunk. And, we were just sitting in the audience while the person who was running the presentation just, picked someone out and described what their animal was like. And they were like amazed, that person, and I was like amazed. And I was like, oh, I don't know. So, and I liked this person's style, so I took a class for her, and then I saw that I could do it, and that other people were doing it with my animals. And I was like, I think this is it. And so at that point, I was like, okay, now I want to be trained, seriously trained. And I picked that same teacher, and she ran it like a college level, like you were going to get a degree in college, like it was a college curriculum. And which, by the way, I think there is in one college in the United States now, they do offer a degree in animal communication. It's in the Midwest. I forget what it's called. But so I really liked that. And her attitude was, this is a practical skill. This is not woo-woo, new agey stuff. This is just using telepathy, and animals that's their universal language, telepathy. All animals, communicate that way. Yes, they communicate in other ways, but they're, the universal one is that. And
that's that's how we communicate too, as humans. Telepathy.
We don't use it, but we have it
turned off. Yeah.
Right. Exactly. And
that's suppressed.
Right.
Or suppressed.
Absolutely suppressed. Think about, I always say, when we're pre-verbal, when we're young children, and we haven't learned speech, pretty much all of us, we don't have memories of it, but we're telepathing all the time. We're telepathing with our parents. We're telepathing with, the stories. If you watch a 3-year-old and they seem to be talking to the air. Well, they're not talking to the air, and they're definitely talking to animals. And then, our cultural conditioning is that, this isn't real, that you can't talk to animals, that animals don't even have feelings, right? That was the conditioning when I grew up. Like, animals didn't even have feelings. That's where science was when I grew up. So, telepathy is sort of an always on, very strong, very powerful communication tool that we've it's been conditioned out of us, or we've also forgotten it. We don't use it. We don't seem to need it. But it's always operating, whether we know it or not. And that's why animals they know what's going on with our energy. Like, they know when we're upset, when we're sad, because we're communicating that to them all the time.
Yeah, we're like radio waves broadcasting.
Yeah.
All everything's our emotions.
I'm sure you know this, right? Everything's about energy. Everything. Yeah.
So how did you transition that to, because I know you talked about EFT and scalar. So how do you kind of veer into that area?
So when I said my teacher ran it like, a college course, well, she taught those modalities too. And so, and again, like, I learned how powerful they are. Like, I remember when the first time when we were doing it in class, and you generally what you do, and what I do in my practice is I'm leading. I am tapping on the animal, and I'm tapping on the person too. Like, because no matter what problem there is, like, if the animal has a problem, the human's involved with that. Their energy is involved with that, so they have to be tapped on too. And for those who don't know what I'm talking about, EFT stands for Emotional Freedom Technique, and it's from Chinese medicine, where you tap on acupressure points in the body that correspond to either, energetic meridians in the body or organs in the body where, our emotions go. And so a lot of times when we have problems, and when our animals have problems, we have these trapped emotions, like, a lot of the anger and jealousy and whatever they are. But so from the minute I started that, like my first time doing it, and it was smart. She was like, I want you to tap on some, sort of memory of animals or something you did that you'd probably regret when you took care of animals. And I have a few of those stories from my childhood. And I think 15 seconds into the tapping, I was weeping. And, that's what it does. It brings out, it releases those feelings of guilt and, whatever they are, anger. And then it kind of programs in, the good stuff. Like, I was a kid then. I'd learned from my parents, like, some of those things that I was neglectful about or whatever, it was, I had to forgive myself for. And so, it's a very, very powerful tool, especially for any energetic behavioral problems that an animal has. Like, if their behavior has changed in some way, often that will help. And Scalar is the same way. Scalar is generally more for physical stuff, although, it helps with everything. But I mainly use it for physical issues. And I'm sure Scalar is, it puts the body back into energetic balance.
Now, with the EFT tapping, do you do it physically? Because I know you do Zoom calls and long distance healing.
It works both ways. It works remote because, again, it's energy.
Right.
So what happens is, we do a Zoom call and I'm leading the person, and it's good for them to see me. Mm-hmm. And then if the animal is receptive to it, which is usually dogs are, then I lead them in tapping on the dog. Cats usually are, it's a non-starter. They usually don't allow it. But so we do it by proxy, and it still works. Mm-hmm. I have 5 cats. All 5 will not allow me to tap on them physically, to tap on their acupressure points. I can tap on a photo of them. I can air tap on them, and it still works. They still have the benefits of it because it's energy. It doesn't need physical touch.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. It kind of brings to mind that we are all one in a way, isn't it? We're all connected.
That's literally the statement I always say in my classes when I'm talking about like how animals are not lesser than us. That that is like the spiritual principle that I think is probably one of the most important. We are all one.
Yeah. I remember my teacher says, if people really understood how karma works, we wouldn't be doing all the violent stuff that we do to other people. We would think twice about how we treat other people because we're all one.
Yes.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah. And we have that capacity to live by that.
Wow, that's interesting. So let's go into some of the stories of your experience. How long have you been a professional animal communicator?
So I started training seriously in 2017, and at that level, I was kind of doing it professionally, but I opened my business in 2019.
Okay.
So it's been about 6 years.
And what was some of the most memorable stories that come to mind?
God, there's so many.
I bet you could probably write a book about it.
I know, I probably will at some point.
Yeah, you love to write. I think that's beautiful.
Yeah. A lot of the really interesting ones, I mean, they're all great because here's the thing. Every animal, just like every person, is unique. They have their own personalities. And so, some are, I'll give you a recent example of a living cat, actually. So this cat was, I need a little backstory. This cat, a client came to me. She had adopted her. Beautiful, like not a calico, but she was multicolored, mixed cat, furry. I think she was about 8 or so. And she adopted her from it was a boarding kennel, but they had cats there that were available for adoption, and this one stuck out for her. And so she had this small apartment in LA and, adopted the cat. And why this person came to me is, first of all, this apartment was in sort of a noisy area. And so the cat was kind of, couldn't settle. And that was like, starting to be getting a little better. But then about a week into the adoption, something like that, was the LA fires. Mm. And so the winds were like, and the cat was just going nuts, just yowling and scared. And so what happened, this person came to me, the cat was like scratching her, like just kind of out of nowhere, sort of attacking her. And so I connected with this cat, and when I do that, I go into a meditation, a deep meditation, and it's telepathic. So you're getting a lot of images, especially from animals, images and feelings, words too. But so the first thing I see is like this cat sort of like, I felt like I was seeing almost like a past life, which sometimes will happen. But this cat was sitting like up high, like almost like on a throne, like looked like on pillows and stuff, and just like looking very regal. And when I first connect with an animal, it's sort of like I'm physically meeting them. That is the scene. That's just sort of that's a style that developed for me that just happened. I didn't try to do that, but it's almost like I'm showing up. If it's your house, I'm showing up at your door as a friendly stranger, and that's always the scene that's set when I first meet the animal. It's been how it's been for me. I think other communicators will have different, there will be different scenes or different methods of connecting, but that's what happens with me. And so this cat was basically up on a throne and would not come to me, because usually like we're coming to each other. We're meeting in the middle, kind of. I'm coming to them, if it's a dog, and I can tell a lot about what they are just by that first connection. Like if a dog's jumping all over me, or if a dog wants to play, or if a dog's looking for food, or same with a cat. And this cat was not moving 1 inch from me. So that tells me a lot. That tells me this is this sort of regal cat. And then just sort of like through the session, I go into her past, and some of this I knew, but she had a former owner, I don't use that word, caretaker, who had passed.
Guardian,
yeah. Guardian caretaker. So, well, not passed. First she went into because she had dementia. So she went into a home. And so this cat, who had been with this person her whole life, other people tried to adopt her, and she kept attacking like the animals or attacking the people. And then eventually they decided, well, we'll try and bring her into this home and see if that works. And that didn't work. Like the person often forgot that she even had this cat, right? She had dementia. Anyway,
this was the past life.
No. This is actually the past life was sort of the first image, because it felt like, why am I seeing a cat on a throne? And then sort of like the other details of that were like, it seemed like there was a temple. Like I felt like there were people around that were sort of the nobility or whatever, and that this cat was like special. This cat was like a sacred cat, like it was either I was either in a throne room or like a temple is what I thought. And and the other stuff I was describing is their actual life. So long story short, and I wrote about this, she's like a regal cat. She does not get along with others because she's above everybody. That was her thing. So she had to be an only cat, but because the place was so noisy and because of the fires, like
chaotic,
she was so afraid. And it wasn't because she was a mean cat or anything. I mean, definitely with other animals, she's like, hey, I'm above you. And that's what she told me, through the whole session about her experiences with other animals. It's like these animals are all below me. Then I went into her life in the boarding house. Well, in the boarding facility. Well, in the boarding facility, she had her own little apartment, right? Her own like cubbyhole. It wasn't giant, but it was hers. No other cats were in it. And like this is a place for a bunch of cats. Then at night, she was allowed out, and she was the only one allowed out to kind of prowl around, do whatever she wanted. And, the workers there loved her, so what I realized is the closest she came, like she was a regal cat. That was her essence, probably through lives, through like I was seeing a past life in the beginning. So she had gone from home to home to home to home into the cat facility, then into my client's apartment, which was kind of a nightmare. But the only time I saw her happy in the meditation and feeling her telepathically, like I saw her walking those halls. And again, like these are images that came through to me. And she was the queen. She felt like she owned the place. She was free and everyone else was locked up at night, right? So, so when I talked about this with the client, a client realized that she belonged back where she was. And of course, the people in the facility, they loved her. So they were like, anytime if you want to bring her back. And so, yeah, I felt so sad for this cat because except for that first start in her life where she was probably treated with a queen with this woman and then that woman getting sick and the grief of that. But this is a cat that was probably meant for big things. And she wasn't going to get like the temple or the throne room in this life, but she got that boarding facility. And in there, she was a queen. And the minute they returned her back there, you could tell like her load was lifted. She went right back into her apartment. She went into different places in her apartment. And then like the first night she was let out, she went down the row of the other like little cat apartments, banged on the glass. And when the cat in there, who was locked up for the night, came to the glass, she would hiss at him. So it's like, that shows sort of how interesting the personality, like this cat, and again, like she was lashing out, not because she was mean, not because she was a cruel cat, but because she was afraid. She was like this, and of course the cat facility has, we found out later, it's soundproof. It's in the middle of the city, but, it's relatively quiet. So, I just think that, and the great thing about that is the communicating with her found out who she really is and what she really needed. And what she really needed is sort of like her little kingdom back at. And so the person who hired me, did that for her. You know, she recognized that too. She recognized that that's what that cat really needed. And sort of, you know, that's like one of those really happy endings. And, you know, I've had other animals, like I had another cat who has passed, who basically, you know, I was just showed me how reincarnation works. At least that's, you know, so, I mean, so many great experiences. And in that case, that cat who I had talked to, you know, when he was alive too, but after he passed, and again, like he was completely different because he was free. He was ill for a while. So, you know, usually animals that are passed are happy. They're serene, right? Their energy is free of that body. And yeah, he told me, I was like, well, how do we reincarnate? What's that? And he gave me, I've never read this in a book before. I've never heard of this, but it was a metaphor, a visual metaphor. So this information came to me visually. And it was like this idea that, yeah, we're in soul families. So we have these larger soul families. And that when we, you know, we are sort of in these, he showed me like a planetary system and that we orbit each other. And so if you have a really close soulmate, whether it's human or animal, you have a very tight orbit around this person. So you're going to see them in every life. And, you know, every life is probably like a close family member or a close friend, someone really. And then you have those who are on sort of wider orbits. So in one life, you know, they may be very close to you, but then in other lives, they'll drift farther away and they would be less important. And I just thought that seemed valid to me. Like that could be how it works. And that came from a cat in a session and in visuals, and I got that information like in 5 seconds. Like if you read that in a book, it would take you 20 minutes to like, for that to be explained to you. So that's just, you know, a couple little things.
Wow, that's powerful. I remember my teacher says if you want to any kind of healing or tapping into the divine, that's the right brain. That's the images. That's the pictures. That's not words or details.
Yeah, it's our intuitive powers.
Intuitive power, correct? Yeah. Yep. And that's our superpower. I tell my clients that all the time. That's your superpower. Your intuition.
100%.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, and that's why, like, you know, people think that this is a gift. Well, the only gift is that I'm passionate about it and that I want to go deeper and that I want to do it all the time. But anyone can do it. Mm-hmm. We can do it with our own animals. You know, even talking to them. Because like you say, like, we're always telepathing, right? Mm-hmm. So even talking to them gets your messages across. That doesn't mean like if you want your animal to do something that they're going to do it, right? They have their own reasons, right?
They have their own free will too.
That's right.
Yeah.
But they get our messages. And so just the simple act of talking to them. But, you know, again, like if you want to learn it, it's not that hard. You know, like I offer an introductory class and, you know, it gives you some good structure just to do it. It's basically like you put together meditation with telepathy, you know, and then it's just a matter of practicing it. It's kind of like our speech. If we didn't use our speech all the time, we'd probably kind of forget how to talk, or it'd be harder. Mm-hmm. And that's what we've done with telepathy.
I've wondered about that. So if humanity as a collective became telepathic, what would that do to our vocal cords? I always wondered. I bet probably all the podcasts would not exist.
That's right.
We would have a different kind of podcast
Well, what is like wireless, wireless connectivity? What is that? But just it's copying what telepathy is.
Mm.
You connect, you have that particular, well, I'm not that technical of a person, but you have to have the address of the computer. Basically, there's certain numbers of it for you to connect your computer, connect your phone.
Mm-hmm.
That's kind of the same with what I do. Like for me, it's like the photo of the animal, or you don't even need that. You just say, hey, I want you to communicate with Picasso, who's in the Lane family. And it's like, that would be all that I need. He's a cat.
Yeah, it's kind of like Google.
Yeah. I mean,
yeah.
It's interesting because what our technology there is mimicking is a power that we already have, an ability that we already have. Like, right. That strikes me.
So that's an interesting question. If the computer mimics us, what do you think the trajectory of AI is? Because there's a lot of talk about that out there today.
I'm no expert on it, but I don't think it's good for us. I mean, in terms of making our lives easier in some ways, yes. But I think the sort of the human spiritual component is, and especially the spiritual component, like not only with humans, but it's missing in AI. And that's just a key thing to me. So there is so much, it would be so easy to abuse it,
I think the spiritual aspect is so important, isn't it? Because you hear stories about like Atlantis, for example, that they're part of their demise and was that they focused so much on the technology that they completely cut off from the spiritual aspect. And you really need the spiritual aspect to be, you have to be spiritually evolved in order to use the technology wisely, I guess you could say, with ethics and morality, which you only can get in the spiritual sense. I don't know if that makes any sense.
No, I totally agree. I'm very intrigued that you brought up Atlantis because, yeah, I'm on the same page with you, and that is sort of the story that I've known too, is that they kind of outran their own humanity with technology, and it seems like we're doing the same thing.
Wow. That's very sad. I hope we don't get to that.
Yeah. That's why I think like things like this, and I'm not saying like it changes the world, but it's a little drop in the bucket. Mm-hmm. And what you do as well. And the fact that you sort of are also, talking to other healers and other people who are doing this kind of work. That stuff is really needed. And to recognize that, yeah, we all are one, and, the natural world is really important to connect to, whether it's animals or, just the outside, the trees and everything else, insects, see them all as, sacred. That's really important.
Well, little drops over time becomes big drops.
That's right.
That's how I see it.
Yeah.
Yeah. So sometimes, I kind of get into my little funk and say, oh, what am I doing? Am I doing it correctly? Am I doing it right? But, we all have our place and we all have our mission, if you will, however small that might be. Even if it's just taking care of my cat, feeding them. That's a little positive drop in the bucket.
100%.
So,
like, yeah, just taking care of animals, like how much you learn and how much you open your heart, just, just by doing that.
yeah. Yeah, you don't have to be a, famous podcaster or whatever. It's not important. They do have their place. There's certain people who are in this lifetime for that mission, but most of us are little drops in the bucket. We all contribute to it. Yeah.
Yeah, and you're touching lives. There's so many like animals and people that I know that I've helped, and there's so many people that have come out of your facility or your orbit, and they feel the same, right? And we have actually a couple in common that have gone to me and you. Mm-hmm. So, yeah, it's important. Like and then, it's just our lives are kind of go easier when we're doing things like that, I think.
Mm-hmm. I think so. Yeah. It's beautiful. So we have a few minutes. Why don't you introduce, you kind of talked a little bit about some of your services, but if you want to elaborate just a little bit about that, and maybe we can close with words of wisdom, and where can people find you?
Sure. So the main things I do are animal communication, which is, telepathing with the animal, and that's for kind of every problem in the book, or even if you just want to know things. But that's the main thing. But yeah, I also do EFT tapping, which is really good, especially for behavioral problems. And scalar wave energy healing, which is really good, especially for physical problems. And yeah, I do end of life services, which basically is about supporting the human and the animal, who are both, it is a very sacred time. Death, the actual transition from sort of, a sick animal to, the actual death. And so there are certain things, communication and supporting the human who's, usually frightened and bewildered and lost, and they need help. And then I also do lost animal services. So that's for if an animal goes missing.
Well, we have a lot of that.
Yeah, for sure.
That's something I pray every day for lost animals, because I hear stories about them all the time.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, excellent. Where can, any last words of wisdom, Michael? And then where can people find you?
Well, I like what you said, and it's kind of because I say the same thing. We are all one. And so I think if we recognize that animals are our brothers and sisters and are not lower than us, we're way ahead of the game. And, that's what this work has taught me, that animals are amazing. And yeah, everything's Animal Michael Lane. So my website is just animal before my name, animalmichaellane.com. Instagram is Animal Michael Lane. Facebook is Animal Michael Lane. My Substack is animalmichaellane.substack.com. So,
and you do readings for not just cats and dogs, right?
Yeah, any animal.
Any animal.
Yeah, I've done elephants, I've done snakes, I've done lizards, anything can be talked to.
Have you done fleas?
I have talked to ants and got them out of my house.
That is pretty funny. They're all about relationships, isn't it? Kind of establishing a relationship, just like humans have relationships. We have relationships with animals, and they all have their own personality. I bet ants have their own personality too.
100%.
Yeah. That's amazing.
You got to talk to the queen.
Talk to the queen. That is so funny. Okay. Well, thank you so much, Michael, for joining, and I really enjoyed our time together. And I will share your links with my audience, and I hope everybody enjoyed this podcast, and we will have another one next time. Okay, in the meantime, I hope everybody have a great day. Bye-bye now.
Thanks for tuning in to the Bodega Cat Podcast. Your host, Christina Ng, will join you here again next month. Until then, have a beautiful month.